I'm standing in front of a brownstone townhouse with ivy crawling up the brick, holding a checkbook that says $36 million, and all I can think about is the taste of stale bread I ate under a bridge 3 weeks ago. My name is Anna Whitmore. I'm 68 years old. And I need to tell you how I went from sleeping on frozen park benches to owning the business that destroyed me. But first, let me take you back to the moment everything shattered. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late February when my husband of 42 years looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Anna, I want a divorce. I've met someone younger. Someone exciting." Exciting. That word burned itself into my chest like a brand. Within 3 months, Gerald took the house we built together. The accounting firm I helped run for decades. The car. The savings. Everything had his name on it, and the law didn't care that my fingerprints were on every brick of the life we'd constructed. But you want to know the worst part? The part that actually broke me? My son Colin stood in the driveway of what used to be my home and said, "Mom, Dad worked hard for all this. Maybe it's time you moved on and stopped being dramatic." Have you ever had someone you gave birth to call your pain dramatic? Have you ever watched your own child choose the person who abandoned you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I want you to remember that feeling because 6 months later, that same son would be standing at my new front door begging for forgiveness. But we're not there yet. After the divorce, I moved into a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and broken promises. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's TV through the plaster. The heating worked maybe 3 days a week. I got a job cleaning office buildings at night. 68 years old, on my knees scrubbing toilets in buildings where I used to attend Christmas parties as Gerald's wife. The other cleaning ladies were kind, but their pity felt worse than the work itself. My knees started giving out first. Then my hands, red and cracked from chemicals. Then my hope. When the landlord raised my rent by $200, I knew I couldn't make it. I'd been stretching cans of soup into 2 meals, walking 40 minutes to save bus fare, wearing 3 sweaters to bed because heat costs money I didn't have. I packed everything I owned into 2 battered suitcases and walked out into the March cold. You know what's strange about becoming homeless? How invisible you become. People look right through you like you're made of glass. I slept in bus stations when I could, church steps when they'd let me, under the Jefferson Street Bridge when it rained. I learned which restaurants threw out bread at closing time, which parks had bathrooms that stayed unlocked, which strangers would give you $1, and which ones would spit. 3 weeks into living on the streets, I found myself at Rosefield Park on a gray Thursday morning. I was sitting on a bench feeding pigeons the crumbs from a muffin someone had thrown away, and I caught my reflection in a puddle. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. That's when a man in a gray suit stopped directly in front of me. He was maybe 40, with kind eyes and a leather briefcase that probably cost more than I'd made in 6 months of cleaning. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you Grandma Anna?" I almost laughed. "I'm Anna Whitmore, but I'm nobody's grandma, son." He smiled like he knew something I didn't. "Then you're exactly who I've been looking for." He reached into his coat and pulled out a brown envelope with my name written across it in elegant cursive handwriting. The paper felt expensive under my trembling fingers. "Someone left you something," he said. "My name is Daniel Cressfield. I'm an estate attorney, and I've been searching for you for 3 months. I stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Left me what? I don't have anyone." "Open it," he said gently. My hand shook so badly, I almost tore the paper. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead with a gold seal at the top. The words swam in front of my eyes, but 3 of them stood out like they were written in fire. $36 million. I read it again. Then again. Then I looked up at Daniel like he was playing the cruelest joke imaginable. "This can't be real," I whispered. "It's very real, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "A man named Lawrence Kavanaugh passed away 4 months ago. He left specific instructions in his will. Every penny of his estate goes to you." Lawrence Kavanaugh. The name hit me like cold water, and suddenly I was 20 years younger, standing in Gerald's office with a plate of homemade cookies, talking to a lonely widower who everyone else ignored. But before I tell you about Lawrence, before I tell you how I bought my ex-husband's company out from under him, before I tell you about the foundation I built or the son who came crawling back, you need to understand something. This story isn't about money. It's about what happens when the world forgets you exist and then suddenly remembers your name. I was born Anna Donnelly in a town so small it didn't even have a traffic light. My father worked at the steel mill, coming home every night with hands that smelled like iron and dreams that smelled like whiskey. My mother died when I was 7, and after that it was just me and Dad in a house that echoed with everything we didn't say to each other. I learned to cook by watching neighbors through their kitchen windows. Learned to sew by unpicking my mother's old dresses and putting them back together. Learned that survival meant keeping your head down and your hands busy. When I met Gerald Whitmore at 23, he was everything my small world wasn't. He wore suits that looked too expensive for a junior accountant, drove a car that shined even in the rain, talked about the future like it was a place he'd already visited and couldn't wait to get back to. He said I had the kindest eyes he'd ever seen. We got married in a church that smelled like old wood and broken air conditioning. 72 people showed up. My father cried, which I'd never seen before. Gerald promised to take care of me forever. And for 42 years, I believed him. We started the accounting firm together in a tiny office above a hardware store. Gerald handled the clients while I managed the books, filed the paperwork, answered the phones, and went home to cook dinner. I did the grocery shopping, the laundry, the birthday cards for his mother, the thank you notes to clients. I gave birth to Colin in that life. Raised him in that life. Built every single piece of that life with my own hands while Gerald smiled and shook hands and took all the credit. And somewhere along the way, I became furniture in my own home. You know what nobody tells you about long marriages? How easy it is to stop being a person and start being a function. The woman who makes coffee. The woman who picks up dry cleaning. The woman who exists in the background of someone else's story. I didn't notice when Gerald stopped kissing me goodbye. Didn't notice when he started working late every Thursday. Didn't notice the new cologne or the way he'd check his phone and smile at messages I wasn't allowed to see. I trusted him the way you trust gravity, completely, without question, because what else would you do? But gravity fails sometimes. And when it does, you fall hard. If you've ever trusted someone who didn't deserve it, hit that like button. Because this is where my story gets ugly, and I need to know I'm not alone in what comes next. The Christmas party was at the Riverside Hotel, the fancy one with the crystal chandelier that looked like frozen rain. I'd bought a new dress for the occasion, navy blue with a silver belt. It was the first new dress I'd bought in 3 years. I walked into that ballroom feeling almost pretty, almost proud of what we'd built together. And then I saw her. She was maybe 30, wearing a red dress that clung to her like a second skin. Blonde hair swept up in a way that probably took an hour and $200. She laughed at something Gerald said, touching his arm like she owned it. His hand rested on her waist. Not friendly. Not professional. Possessive. I watched them for 5 full minutes before he noticed me. When our eyes met across the room, he didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. I spent the rest of that party smiling at people who asked where I'd been hiding, pretending my world wasn't collapsing in real time. We didn't speak on the drive home. The silence in that car was so thick, I could barely breathe through it. When we got inside, I finally asked, "Who is she?" Gerald poured himself a drink, took a long sip, and said, "Her name is Melissa. She's a client." That wasn't a client relationship. He laughed, actually laughed. "Anna, we're different people now. I want something new. Something exciting. You have to understand, I've been working hard for decades. I deserve this. Exciting." There was that word again. "What about our marriage?" I asked. "What about 42 years?" He looked at me like I was a child asking why the sky is blue. "Anna, you're a good person. But good isn't enough anymore. I need passion. I need someone who makes me feel alive. I made you coffee every morning for 42 years. I wanted to scream. I raised your son. I built your business. I was there when your father died, and when your firm almost went bankrupt, and when you were too scared to pitch to new clients. But I didn't say any of that. I just stood there while my husband of 4 decades told me I wasn't exciting enough to keep. The divorce papers arrived 6 weeks later. Gerald's lawyer was expensive. Mine was overworked and underpaid. Everything, the house, the business, the car, the savings, was in Gerald's name. I never thought to protect myself, because you don't protect yourself from someone you trust with your whole life. The judge was sympathetic but practical. Mrs. Whitmore, without your name on the deed or the business registration, my hands are tied. The law is clear. I walked out of that courtroom with $8,000 and a lifetime of rage I had nowhere to put. But you know what hurt worse than Gerald? What actually shattered me into pieces I'm still finding? My son. Colin was 39, married with 2 kids I barely saw anymore. When I called to tell him about the divorce, he sighed like I was bothering him with something trivial. Mom, these things happen. Dad's been unhappy for a while. And you knew? My voice cracked. You knew he was cheating? I wouldn't call it cheating exactly. They connected, Mom. Sometimes people grow apart. Connected. Like Gerald and I hadn't been connected for 4 decades. Like I was some stranger Dad had gotten tired of talking to. When I asked if I could stay with him for a few weeks while I found my feet, his wife Jennifer got on the phone. Anna, we're just so cramped right now with the kids, and Jennifer's mother visits on weekends. Maybe you could find a small apartment? We could help with the first month's rent. They sent me a check for $800. I never cashed it. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before you answer in the comments. If your mother lost everything, would you take her in? Or would you make excuses about space and schedules, and why now isn't a good time? Because your answer to that question tells me everything I need to know about you. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that should have been condemned 20 years ago. Roaches in the kitchen. Mold in the bathroom. Pipes that screamed every time someone flushed a toilet 3 floors away. But it was mine, and it was all I could afford on what little I'd walked away with. I got the cleaning job through an ad in the newspaper. Nobody wants to hire a 67-year-old woman, but nobody wants to clean office buildings at 3 in the morning either, so we were a perfect match. My supervisor was a man named Rick who smelled like cigarettes and disappointment. He handed me a bucket, a mop, and a bottle of industrial cleaner that could probably strip paint. You do the 4th and 5th floors, he said. Bathrooms, break rooms, conference rooms. Don't steal anything, don't break anything, and don't expect Christmas bonuses. I nodded and got to work. You learn things about people when you clean up after them. The executive who leaves beer bottles in his desk drawer. The secretary who cries in the bathroom and leaves tissue everywhere. The janitor before me who carved his name into the supply closet wall like he wanted someone to remember he existed. My knees started hurting after the 2nd week. Sharp, stabbing pain that made me gasp when I stood up too fast. I bought knee pads from the dollar store, the kind construction workers use, and kept going. My hands cracked and bled from the chemicals. I wrapped them in old socks at night and rubbed them with petroleum jelly I stole from the office first aid kit. The other cleaning ladies were kind in that quiet way people are when they recognize their own struggle in someone else's face. Maria shared her lunch sometimes. Keisha showed me which supply closets had the good toilet paper I could take home. But their pity felt like acid on my skin. Every paycheck disappeared before I could even deposit it. Rent, utilities, food, bus fare. I started walking to save the $2 each way. 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back, through neighborhoods where I kept my head down and my purse clutched tight. I called Colin once a week, always during lunch hour when I thought he might pick up. He never did. Jennifer always answered instead. He's in a meeting, Anna. He's traveling for work, Anna. He's really busy with the kids, Anna. I stopped calling after the 5th week of excuses. Gerald never called at all. I thought I'd hit bottom when I couldn't afford to keep my phone anymore. Thought I'd hit bottom when I started eating 1 meal a day to stretch my paycheck. Thought I'd hit bottom when I found myself stealing toilet paper from public bathrooms because I couldn't afford to buy it. But bottom kept getting deeper. The landlord was a man named Vincent who wore gold chains and smelled like aftershave that cost more than my monthly rent. He knocked on my door on the 1st of March with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Rent's going up, sweetheart. 200 more starting next month." I felt my chest tighten. "I can barely afford what I'm paying now." He shrugged. "That's business. You got 30 days to come up with it or find somewhere else." I tried to negotiate. Begged, actually. Asked if I could do extra cleaning in the building, fix things, anything to make up the difference. Vincent looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "Lady, I got a waiting list for this place. You're replaceable." Replaceable. Another word that burned itself into my memory. I tried to pick up extra shifts at work, but Rick said they didn't have the budget. I applied to 12 other jobs and got 12 rejection emails, all saying basically the same thing: "We're looking for someone with more recent experience." Translation: "We're looking for someone younger." I had 19 days before my rent was due when I made the hardest decision of my life. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. Clothes, photos, the blanket my mother made before she died, 3 books I couldn't bring myself to sell. Everything else I left behind. On March 18th, I walked out of that apartment and became one of the invisible people I used to step over on my way to the grocery store. You know what's terrifying? Not knowing where you'll sleep that night. Not knowing where your next meal will come from. Not knowing if you'll survive the cold or the rain or the men who look at homeless women like we're prey. The first night, I slept in the bus station. Security kicked me out at 2 in the morning. The second night, I found a church with an unlocked side door and slept in a pew until the pastor found me at dawn and told me I couldn't stay. I learned quickly. Churches locked their doors. Shelters had waiting lists months long. Some businesses let you sleep in doorways, others called the cops. I found the Jefferson Street Bridge on my 4th night. It was concrete and cold and smelled like urine and despair, but it kept the rain off. 6 other people had claimed spots under there, mostly men, 1 other woman who didn't make eye contact with anyone. We had an unspoken rule: stay in your space, don't steal, don't ask questions. I used my suitcases as a pillow and slept with my arms wrapped around them because everything I had left in the world was in those 2 bags. I cried myself to sleep that first night under the bridge. Not quietly either. Big, ugly sobs that echoed off the concrete and probably kept everyone else awake. Nobody said anything. When you're homeless, you understand that sometimes crying is all you can do. Have you ever felt so low that you didn't think you could survive another day? Drop a comment if you're still here with me, because what happens next changed everything, and I need you to understand how dark it got before the light found me. I learned to survive in ways I never imagined I'd need to know. The McDonald's on 5th Street threw out bagels and muffins every morning at 6. If you got there at 6:15, you could fish them out of the dumpster before the garbage truck came. They were usually still in the bag. The library on Oakwood opened at 9 and didn't kick people out unless you fell asleep or smelled too bad. I went there to use the bathroom, wash my face in the sink, and sit somewhere warm for a few hours. The soup kitchen on Palmer Street served lunch at noon, but you had to get in line by 11 or you wouldn't make it inside before they ran out. The food was bland and the portions were small, but it was hot and it was free. I learned which streets to avoid at night, which police officers would tell you to move along, and which ones would actually check if you were okay, which other homeless people you could trust, and which ones you couldn't turn your back on. I learned that being invisible was both a curse and a protection. People who didn't see you couldn't hurt you, but they also couldn't help you. I aged 10 years in 3 weeks. My hair, which I'd always kept neat, became tangled and dull. My skin broke out from sleeping in the dirt. My clothes started to smell no matter how many times I rinsed them in public bathroom sinks. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold or even the fear. It was the shame. The crushing, suffocating shame of knowing I'd worked my whole life, raised a family, built a business, and still ended up here. Sleeping under bridges. Eating out of garbage cans. Begging strangers for change just to buy a cup of coffee to warm my hands. I thought about dying a lot during those weeks. Not actively suicidal, just passive wondering about how much easier it would be to stop fighting. To lie down somewhere quiet and just not get back up. But something in me refused to quit. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was spite. Maybe it was just that 42 years of survival instinct doesn't disappear overnight. On the morning of the 21st day, I found myself at Rosefield Park. It's a small park with a pond and benches and pigeons that have grown fat on tourist breadcrumbs. I used to take Colin there when he was little, pushing him on swings and watching him chase ducks. Now, I was the person parents pulled their children away from. I sat on a bench with a muffin I'd found in a trash can, breaking off pieces and tossing them to the pigeons. They swarmed around my feet, fighting over crumbs, and I remember thinking we weren't that different. All of us just trying to survive on scraps. That's when I saw my reflection in a puddle. The woman staring back looked ancient. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, hair that hadn't been properly washed in weeks. She looked defeated in a way that made my chest hurt. I didn't recognize her. More importantly, I didn't know if I could keep being her. And that's the exact moment Daniel Crestfield appeared. He walked up to my bench in his gray suit and leather shoes that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. He looked clean and professional and completely out of place in this part of the park where the forgotten people gather. I expected him to walk past me like everyone else did, but he stopped. Actually stopped and looked directly at me like I was a person instead of a problem to avoid. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, and his voice was gentle in a way I'd almost forgotten existed. "Are you Grandma Anna?" I must have looked at him like he was crazy because he smiled, not the pitying smile I'd gotten used to, but something softer. "I'm Anna Whitmore," I said. "But I'm not anybody's grandma, son." He tilted his head. "Are you the Anna Whitmore who used to run Whitmore Accounting with her husband Gerald?" My whole body went rigid. "Used to. That's not my life anymore." "Then you're exactly who I've been looking for." He reached into his coat, fancy, probably cashmere, and pulled out a brown envelope. "My name is Daniel Crestfield. I'm an attorney with Crestfield and Associates. I've been searching for you for 3 months." I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. "Searching for me? Why?" "Because someone left you something very important, and I've been legally obligated to find you and deliver it personally." He held out the envelope. My name was written across it in handwriting I didn't recognize. Elegant, old-fashioned, the kind of penmanship they don't teach anymore. My hands shook as I took it. The paper felt expensive, heavy, real. "What is this?" I whispered. "Open it," Daniel said gently. "But maybe you should sit back down first." I didn't realize I'd stood up. I sat, my heart hammering against my ribs in a way that hurt. I opened the envelope carefully, like something precious was inside. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead, gold seal at the top, official stamps and signatures at the bottom, and in the middle, words that made absolutely no sense. Estate of Lawrence Kavanaugh. Deceased February 12th, 2024.
Sole beneficiary, Anna Donnelly Whitmore.
Total inheritance, $36,400,000. I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. The numbers didn't change. "This is a mistake," I said. My voice sounded far away. "This has to be a mistake." Daniel crouched down, so we were eye level. "Mrs. Whitmore, I assure you this is completely legitimate. Mr. Kavanaugh was very specific in his will. Everything goes to you. The money, the properties, the investments. All of it. But I don't even know a Lawrence Kavanaugh. I mean, that name sounds familiar, but..." And then it hit me. Like a door opening in a dark room, flooding everything with light. Lawrence Kavanaugh. Larry. Gerald's client from 20 years ago. The quiet widower with the little terrier named Rufus. The man everyone ignored because he wasn't important enough, wasn't rich enough, wasn't worth their time. But I remembered him. Lawrence Kavanaugh had been one of Gerald's first clients, back when the firm was still small, and we took anyone who walked through the door. He was 60-something, soft-spoken, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He came in wearing the same brown cardigan every week, always apologizing for taking up our time. His wife had just died, and he needed help sorting out her estate. Gerald found him boring. "He's got maybe 50,000 in assets," he'd say. "Waste of time." But I saw something else. I saw a man drowning in grief who needed someone to be patient with him. So I was. When Gerald was too busy or too impatient, I'd sit with Lawrence and walk him through the paperwork. Explain what the forms meant. Help him understand his options. I learned his wife's name was Dorothy. They'd been married 38 years. She loved gardening and mystery novels and made the best apple pie he'd ever tasted. I don't know how to exist without her, he told me once, crying in our conference room while Gerald rolled his eyes from his office. I didn't have answers for him, but I had time. I'd make him tea, let him talk, and never once make him feel like he was a burden. When Dorothy's estate was settled, Lawrence brought me a thank you card with a hand-painted cardinal on the front. Inside, he'd written, "You're the only genuine soul I've met in this greedy town. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked through me." I'd put that card in my desk drawer and forgotten about it until this very moment. Over the years, Lawrence would come back occasionally. Tax help, investment questions, simple things. Gerald always pawned him off on me. "You handle it, Anna. I've got real clients to deal with." Real clients. Like Lawrence wasn't real because he wasn't rich. I went to Dorothy's funeral when it happened. Gerald refused, said it was a waste of time. But I went, sat in the back of a nearly empty church, and watched Lawrence cry over a casket covered in sunflowers. After the service, he hugged me and said, "Thank you for being here. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," I told him. That was the last time I saw Lawrence Kavanaugh. He moved away after that, I think to Florida or maybe Arizona. Somewhere warm. I never heard from him again. Until now. Until a man in a gray suit handed me an envelope that said Lawrence had died 4 months ago and left me everything. "He didn't have any family?" I asked Daniel. "No children, no siblings, parents long gone. He never remarried after Dorothy died. According to his will, you were the only person who treated him like a human being when he needed it most. He wanted you to have peace." Those were his exact words. Give Anna Whitmore her peace. She once gave me mine. My eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears. Something else. Something I couldn't name. Lawrence had been paying attention. All those years ago, when I thought I was just doing the decent thing, just being kind to a lonely man who reminded me of my father, he'd been watching, remembering. And now, decades later, when I had nothing left, when I was sleeping under bridges and eating from trash cans, when my own family had abandoned me and I'd given up on the world ever being fair, Lawrence Kavanaugh reached back, through time, and saved my life. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Daniel said gently. "Are you all right?" I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. He remembered me. He did more than remember you. He spent the last 10 years of his life building wealth specifically, so he could leave it to you. He invested carefully, made smart choices, lived modestly. All so that when he died, you'd never have to worry again. I looked down at the paper in my hands. $36 million. More money than I could even comprehend. But that's not what broke me. What broke me was knowing that somewhere out there, a lonely old man had spent a decade making sure I'd be okay. That's the kind of kindness the world doesn't deserve. "What happens now?" I asked. Daniel smiled. "Now we get you somewhere warm. Then we start the paperwork. By the end of the week, you'll have access to everything. But first," he pulled out his phone. "First, I'm taking you to a hotel. You're going to shower, sleep in a real bed, and order room service. Tomorrow, we'll handle the rest." I looked down at my dirty clothes, my cracked hands, my suitcases full of everything I owned. 21 days ago, I'd lost everything. And now, because I'd been kind to a stranger 20 years ago, everything had changed. But here's what I need you to understand, and this is important. This wasn't about money. This was about being seen. About mattering to someone when you thought you didn't matter to anyone. And what I was about to do with that money. That's where this story really begins. Because Gerald and Colin and everyone who'd forgotten I existed were about to remember my name. The hotel room had white sheets that smelled like lavender and a bathroom with water pressure that actually worked. I stood under that shower for 40 minutes, watching weeks of dirt and shame swirl down the drain. The water ran brown, then gray, then finally clear. I used every tiny bottle of shampoo and soap they'd left on the counter, scrubbing my skin until it turned pink. When I finally looked in the mirror, I still saw a broken woman. But at least she was clean. Daniel had left me there with his card and instructions to order anything I wanted from room service. I ordered a burger and fries because I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten something hot that didn't come from a charity kitchen or a dumpster. That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in 3 weeks. No concrete under my back. No sounds of traffic or other desperate people coughing in the dark. Just silence and softness and safety. I woke up crying. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel helped me navigate the legal maze of Lawrence's estate. Meetings with accountants, lawyers, investment advisors. People in expensive suits who looked at me like I was a lottery winner who didn't deserve the ticket. Maybe they were right. But Lawrence thought I deserved it, and that was enough. The money hit my account on a Tuesday morning. I checked my phone, saw the numbers, and had to sit down before I fell down. $36,400,000. My entire life, I never had more than $8,000 at one time. And now I had enough money to live comfortably for 10 lifetimes. The first thing I did was buy clothes that actually fit. Nothing fancy, jeans, sweaters, comfortable shoes. But they were new, and they were mine. The second thing I did was find a place to live. Daniel helped me look at houses, but everything felt too big, too empty, too much. Until we found a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood with a small garden out back. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with windows that let in actual sunlight. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't trying to prove anything. It was just a home. I bought it in cash and moved in with my 2 suitcases and nothing else. For the first week, I just sat in the empty living room and cried. Happy tears, sad tears, confused tears. All of it pouring out at once because I finally had space to feel everything I'd been pushing down for months. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop. Gerald. He looked different. Thinner. Older. His suit didn't fit as well as it used to, and there were dark circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. I almost didn't open the door. Almost pretended I wasn't home. But curiosity won out. Hello, Gerald. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes.
Anna.
You look good. Really good. What do you want? He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. I heard you came into some money. An inheritance. Of course he'd heard. This town loved gossip more than it loved the truth. That's none of your business, I said. I know. I made mistakes. Melissa and I were not together anymore. She left me for someone with more money. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Ironic, right? I didn't say anything. The firm's struggling, he continued. Without your organizational skills, things have fallen apart. I'm behind on payments, losing clients. I thought maybe we could talk. Maybe have dinner? Start over. Like 42 years and a divorce and 3 weeks of homelessness were just a rough patch we could smooth over with a nice meal. I looked at this man I'd once loved more than anything. This man I'd built a life with, sacrificed for, believed in. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not love.
Not even satisfaction.
Just nothing. Gerald, I said quietly, you always loved business, didn't you? He looked confused. I mean, yeah, it's what I'm good at. Then you'll be interested to know I just bought your firm. The color drained from his face. You what? Your company. Whitmore Accounting.
Or what's left of it anyway.
You owe about $400,000 to various creditors. I paid them all off and bought out your shares. As of this morning, I own 100% of the business you built on my back. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. You can't. That's not. Anna, that's my life. It was my life too. For 42 years. But you didn't care about that when you threw me away for something exciting. So, what? This is revenge? You're going to shut it down? I smiled for the first time in that conversation.
No.
I'm going to fix it. Clean it up, pay the employees fairly, treat clients with respect. Everything you should have been doing all along. You're welcome to reapply for a position if you'd like. Entry level, of course. The look on his face was worth every night I'd spent under that bridge. I have a meeting with my lawyer, I said. You'll need to clear out your office by Friday. Security will escort you if necessary. I closed the door before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From power. From finally standing up for myself. If you've ever wanted to tell someone who hurt you exactly what they deserve, leave a comment. Because what happened next made me realize revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just living well. The firm took 6 months to turn around. I hired new management, fixed the broken systems, apologized to clients Gerald had mistreated. I worked 16-hour days, not because I had to, but because I wanted to prove I could do this. That I'd always been capable. I'd just never been given the chance. Gerald tried calling a few times. Left voicemails that started angry and ended desperate. I never called back. What was there to say? Some bridges don't need rebuilding. They need to stay burned. But Colin was different. He showed up on a Saturday morning with flowers and guilt written all over his face. I let him in because he's still my son, even though he'd stopped acting like it. We sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee I'd made from beans that cost more per pound than I used to spend on groceries in a week. Mom, he said, staring into his cup, I'm sorry. I should have helped you. I should have taken you in. I was selfish and cruel, and I have no excuse. I waited. Let the silence stretch until it hurt. Jennifer and I have been talking, he continued. We want to make it right. We want you to be part of the kids' lives again. They ask about you all the time. Do they? I asked. Or is Jennifer coaching them to ask? He flinched. That's not fair. Fair? Colin, I slept under a bridge. I ate food from trash cans. I spent 3 weeks wondering if I'd survive to see another day. And you were 20 minutes away living in your comfortable house with your comfortable life, telling yourself I was being dramatic. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't ask. My voice came out sharper than I intended. You didn't ask because you didn't want to know. Because knowing would have meant doing something, and doing something would have been inconvenient. He set down his coffee cup. His hands were shaking. You're right. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. But I'm here now, and I want to fix this. Please, Mom. Tell me what I can do. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He had my eyes and his father's jawline and 40 years of choices between us that couldn't be undone. Tell me something, I said. If I hadn't inherited this money, would you be here right now? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'd like to think so. That's not an answer. He looked down. I don't know. Maybe not right now, but eventually. I nodded. That's what I thought. So, what? You're cutting me off. I'm your son. And you're also someone who needs to learn that love isn't transactional. That kindness isn't something you show up for when it's convenient or profitable. I stood up. I'm not cutting you off, Colin. But I'm not rewarding you either. If you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it the old-fashioned way, with time, effort, and proof that you mean what you say. He looked like I'd slapped him. How am I supposed to prove that? Actions. Not words. Not flowers. Not guilt. Show me you care when it costs you something. When it's inconvenient. When nobody's watching and there's nothing in it for you. I walked him to the door. He paused on the threshold, looking small and lost. I do love you, Mom. I know I haven't shown it, but I do. Then show it, I said gently. Starting now. After he left, I sat in my empty kitchen and wondered if I'd been too hard on him. If forgiveness was supposed to be immediate, automatic, unconditional. But then I remembered sleeping under that bridge and calling his number while his wife made excuses. I remembered being invisible to my own child. And I decided that some forgiveness needs to be earned, not given. 3 months later, Colin started volunteering at a homeless shelter. Twice a week, every week, serving meals and handing out blankets. He didn't tell me about it. I found out from someone else. That's when I knew he was starting to understand. Real change happens in the dark, when nobody's applauding. And slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding what we'd lost. Not what we had before, that was gone. But something new.
Something honest.
It's not a perfect relationship. We're still learning how to trust each other again. But it's real, and that's more than we had before. But here's what nobody tells you about getting your life back. It's not enough to heal yourself. You have to help others heal too, or all that money and power becomes just another kind of loneliness. Which brings me to what I did next, and why Lawrence's gift became something so much bigger than either of us ever imagined. I was sitting in my garden on a Sunday morning, drinking coffee and watching birds fight over the feeder, when the idea hit me. All this money, all this second chance. What was I supposed to do with it? I could travel, buy expensive things, live comfortably for the rest of my life, and never think about anyone else again. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman in the puddle at Rosefield Park. That hollow, defeated version of myself that I'd become. And I knew I couldn't be the only one. I called Daniel that afternoon. I want to start a foundation. Something to help women like me. Women who've lost everything and think they'll never find their way back. He was quiet for a moment. That's a beautiful idea, Anna. What did you have in mind? We spent the next 6 months building the Kavanaugh Foundation from the ground up. Our mission was simple. Help women over 50 who'd lost everything through divorce, death, or abandonment. Women's Society had decided we're too old to matter anymore. We bought a building downtown, nothing fancy, just functional, and hired a small staff. Social workers, counselors, job trainers. People who understood that starting over at 60 isn't the same as starting over at 30. We offered temporary housing, job retraining programs, mental health support, legal assistance for women navigating complicated divorces, financial literacy classes. But most importantly, we offered dignity. Nobody who walked through our doors was treated like a charity case. They were women who'd fallen on hard times and needed a hand up, not a handout. The word spread fast. Within 3 months, we were helping 40 women. Within 6 months, we had a waiting list. I met every single one of them, learned their names, their stories, their dreams. There was Patricia, 63, whose husband died and left her with medical debt she'd never seen coming. She worked at our foundation now, helping other women navigate the healthcare system. There was Denise, 57, whose husband emptied their bank accounts and disappeared with his secretary. She started her own small business with seed money from our program, a bakery that now employs 5 people. There was Maria, 59, who'd been caring for her sick mother for 15 years. When her mother died, Maria had nothing, no job history, no savings, no family left. She lived with us for 8 months while she got her nursing certification. Now she works at a hospital and visits every month to thank us. Each story was different. Each woman was unique. But they all shared one thing. They'd been forgotten by a world that decided they didn't matter anymore. And we proved that world wrong. The media started calling me the Phoenix Widow. I hated the nickname. Too dramatic, too focused on me. This wasn't about my story. It was about theirs. But people loved it. Donations started coming in from strangers across the country. Women who'd gone through similar struggles and wanted to help others avoid their fate. We expanded. Opened a second location. Then a third. Started offering scholarships and emergency grants and crisis intervention. One evening, a young volunteer named Sarah asked me, "Mrs. Whitmore, do you believe in karma?" I thought about Lawrence, about sleeping under bridges, about Gerald's face when I told him I owned his company, about Colin learning how to be decent again. I believe in balance, I said. What you put into the world doesn't disappear. It circles back when you least expect it, sometimes as reward, sometimes as lesson, but it always comes back. She smiled. You really think kindness matters that much? Honey, I said, kindness is the only thing that matters. Everything else is just noise. That night, I went home to my quiet townhouse and thought about everything that had changed. How a lonely old man's gratitude had saved my life. How that salvation had become my purpose. How losing everything had taught me what actually mattered. But I need you to understand something critical here. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real life. And in real life, some stories don't tie up neatly with bows and forgiveness and everyone holding hands. Because while I was building something beautiful, Gerald's world was falling apart in ways I never expected. I heard about Gerald's troubles through the grapevine, the way small-town news always travels. Melissa had left him within 6 months of their wedding, took half of what little he had left and moved to California with a tech executive who could afford the lifestyle she wanted. The firm I'd taken from him? He tried to start a competing business, but nobody trusted him anymore. Clients remembered how he'd treated them, how he'd valued money over relationships, how he'd thrown away a 42-year marriage like it was garbage. Turns out reputation matters when you're starting over. His house went into foreclosure.
His car got repossessed.
He moved into a studio apartment in the same building I'd lived in before I became homeless. I should have felt satisfied, maybe even happy, but I just felt tired. One afternoon, I got a call from Daniel. Anna, Gerald showed up at my office today. He's asking if you'd be willing to meet with him.
Why?
He didn't say, but he looked rough. Really rough. I almost said no. Almost told Daniel to tell Gerald to lose my number and leave me alone. But something made me hesitate. Maybe curiosity. Maybe mercy. Maybe just the need to close that chapter once and for all.
Fine, I said.
Tell him to meet me at Rosefield Park. Friday at 2. The irony of the location wasn't lost on me. Gerald showed up 10 minutes late, driving a car that had seen better days. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. His suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were hollow. He looked the way I'd looked in that puddle 6 months ago. We sat on the same bench where Daniel had found me. Gerald would meet my eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," he said quietly. "What do you want, Gerald?" He took a deep breath. "I want to apologize. Really apologize, not the half-hearted thing I tried before. What I did to you was unforgivable. I was selfish and cruel, and I threw away the best thing in my life because I was too stupid to see what I had." I waited. Let him sit with his words. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued. "I don't deserve it. But I needed you to hear that I know what I did. I understand now. Losing everything, being alone, realizing that all the things I thought mattered don't mean anything when you have nobody who cares if you live or die." His voice cracked on that last part. "I'm not here to ask for money," he said quickly. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just needed to say I'm sorry, and that you deserved so much better than what I gave you." I looked at this man I'd once loved. This man who destroyed me and then got destroyed in return. And I felt something unexpected. Not love. Not even forgiveness. Just pity. "Gerald," I said softly, "do you know why Lawrence left me his money?" He shook his head. "Because 20 years ago, I was kind to him when he was grieving. I made him tea and listened to his stories and went to his wife's funeral when nobody else would. I didn't do it expecting anything in return. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Gerald was crying now, quiet tears running down his face. "That's the difference between us," I continued. "You spent your whole life taking. I spent mine giving. And, in the end, the universe noticed." "I know," he whispered. "I know that now." I stood up. "I hope you find peace, Gerald. I really do. But you're not going to find it with me. That door is closed." "I understand." He wiped his eyes. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you're doing. The foundation. Helping people. It's more than I ever accomplished." I nodded and walked away. I didn't look back. That was the last time I ever saw Gerald Whitmore. I heard he moved to another state, started over somewhere nobody knew his name. I hope he found whatever he was looking for. But it wasn't my job to help him find it. Some people need to fall before they learn how to stand. And some falls are too deep to climb out of. That's not cruelty. That's just life teaching the lessons we refuse to learn gently. But while Gerald's story ended in darkness, mine was just beginning to shine, and what I built next would help thousands of women find their light again. It's been 2 years since Daniel found me on that park bench. The Kavanaugh Foundation now operates in 12 cities across 3 states. We've helped over 800 women rebuild their lives. 800 women who society said were too old, too broken, Too far gone to matter anymore. We proved them wrong. Colin volunteers twice a week now. Brings his kids sometimes. Teaches them about kindness and second chances. We're not where we used to be. We'll never be there again, but we're somewhere honest. Somewhere real. Jennifer apologized too, eventually. I accepted it because holding grudges is exhausting and life's too short to carry that weight forever. The firm Gerald built is thriving now. We treat employees like humans, not expenses. We serve clients with respect, not greed. And every quarter, we donate 10% of our profits to the foundation. Gerald would hate that. Which makes me smile every time I sign the check. I still live in my modest townhouse with a garden. Still drive a sensible car and buy my clothes on sale. The money didn't change who I am. It just gave me the tools to do what I'd always wanted to do. Help people. Make a difference. Matter. Every Sunday morning, I visit Rosefield Park. Sit on that same bench, feed the pigeons, and remember the woman I was when I had nothing. Sometimes I bring fresh flowers and leave them on the bench with a note. For Lawrence. Thank you for seeing me. People probably think I'm crazy. Let them think whatever they want. Last month, a woman approached me at the park. She was maybe 70, wearing clothes that had seen better days, carrying a backpack that probably held everything she owned. Excuse me, she said hesitantly. Are you the woman from the Kavanaugh Foundation? The Phoenix Widow? I smiled. I'm Anna Whitmore. And yes, I started the foundation. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know where else to go. My husband died. The bank took the house. My kids don't return my calls. I've been living in my car for 2 weeks. I took her hand. Come with me. You're not alone anymore. That's what this story is really about. Not revenge or karma or cosmic justice. It's about how kindness multiplies. How one act of compassion from Lawrence became a foundation that saved hundreds. How my pain became purpose. How losing everything taught me what actually matters. Money doesn't define you. Power doesn't define you. Success doesn't define you. How you treat people when you have nothing to gain. That's what defines you. True justice doesn't need thunder or lightning. It doesn't need revenge plots or dramatic confrontations. It speaks in the quiet moments. In the woman who finds housing after sleeping in her car. In the daughter who learns to value her mother again. In the foundation that proves forgotten women still matter. The loudest revenge is living in peace. Building something beautiful from ashes. Proving that kindness leaves fingerprints time can't erase. And if you're sitting there right now, watching this, wondering if your kindness matters, if anyone notices when you're decent to people who can't pay you back, I'm here to tell you it does. Lawrence noticed. And 20 years later, he saved my life. Your kindness is being noticed too. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere in the universe, receipts are being kept. And one day, when you need it most, that kindness will find its way home. If Anna's story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because next week, I'm bringing you another true story about love, loss, and the unexpected ways life pays us back. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever helped someone and thought nobody noticed? Because I guarantee you someone did. Your story could inspire someone else to keep being kind, even when it's hard. Life keeps the receipts. Make sure yours are worth reading.